Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the podcast. I am your host, Corey C., team member of Katina, a blockchain thesaurus of everything oriented to cryptocurrency and blockchain information. And I'm here with a special guest today of both the Hex and PulseChain community by the name of Chrispy. How are you today?
I'm good, Corey. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you for asking. And I'm very excited to hear your perspective and thoughts about the Pulse Chain project and Hex as a person who I'm relatively new to the Pulse Chain and Hex communities. I've grown to love these communities as I've seen how tight knit they are and how friendly everyone is. So there's the project Pulse Chain that's coming out, and it's drumming up a lot of excitement. There's almost 50,000 people in the Telegram channel alone. So, as someone who's been involved in Hex for a while, what is Pulse Chain in your own view? What's your perspective on Pulse Chain?
Probably going to be one of the greatest blockchains ever created. Yeah. Hey, I've been watching your videos, so good job so far.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
And actually, you're one of the reasons we are being successful.
Thank you.
And others, right? Because really, I think the big difference between the Hex and the Pulse community and other communities is that we have a community that's engaged the way we are. It's pretty unique. There are some others I've run across, but they pale in comparison, you know?
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
I think the biggest thing that I'd say about what is Pulse Chain and what's my view on it is I was in the beginning, and I wanted to figure out this whole DeFi thing and how do you earn yield, and to do that, we were staking, and my earliest stakes were probably fractions of a penny, to create
Wow.
And today, if I do one, I did one the night before last. It was $30 just to stake, and that's the crux of the matter, right? Is getting us on a platform where we can do that. Some of the competitors that are out there to the Ethereum chain. If I want to send something on Solana or Cardano or another chain, cheap, really cheap.
Yes, it is.
So we're hurting ourselves by being on the Ethereum chain, and so that's really the reason for Pulse, and it's going to be a wonderful thing. And the outcome of that is we all get a second copy of any Hex we have, as well as an opportunity to help other people. So,
absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I think that people don't realize that Pulse Chain is looking to basically perfect all of the dilemmas that Ethereum has faced, because no one expected Ethereum to become this congested with individuals, with transactions. I mean, the rate that you have to pay for a transaction, a gas fee, is astronomical. It's almost insulting. So I think Pulse Chain is a great alternative. It's green, number one, and number two, you can send transactions for a fraction of the penny, as we have seen with the testnet.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, what? Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, one of the big things that's happened over the last couple of years is the narratives change. Now, you may have heard the narrative about Bitcoin early on was all about being a currency and being able to spend it. And that has changed to, to really a store of value. Now you're seeing the same transformation, or a similar one with Ethereum, where no longer are people talking about as much about using it to spend. They're talking about how do we buy a whole bunch of it and lock it up like we did Bitcoin, and go to 15, 20, or 30,000. So it doesn't need to be cheap to transact in that kind of a case, right? But that, of course, that hurts all the projects that were out there trying to work with contracts.
Absolutely. I appreciate that you bring up that narrative, because in 2008, 2009, there was this very, from a political standpoint, there was a very large libertarian ethos that there was going to be this new global currency that was free of centralized control, free of government involvement. And now what we're seeing is exactly how you highlighted, is that Bitcoin and Ethereum, their narrative has changed to a alternative to gold as a digital store of value instead of a currency. And we're seeing experiments around the world, specifically with El Salvador, where Bitcoin is experimented as a currency. But I do believe in the narrative as well that Bitcoin and Ethereum are more store of values than anything, than a currency.
And we don't know the future yet, but it might quite possibly be that is the future for every, for every currency or cryptocurrency that's out there.
Absolutely.
And even as we speak right now, the unexpected is happening right this minute. Bitcoin's breaking the all-time high.
Yep.
And pushing up, and Hex is right there with it.
Yep. And
well, of course we had the dip. But
yeah, I saw the dip, but it's still rebounding fantastically.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
So on that topic with Hex, there are a lot of people I've spoken to regarding Hex and PulseChain. What enticed you to get into Hex and now PulseChain? What was the motivating factor?
Yeah, sure. Well, to sum it up is financial independence, or pursuit of financial independence. When you're saving for your future and wanting to do the things you want to do and retire, or even just augment your income, you're looking for ways to earn, and it's very difficult to earn anything. I mean, what can you earn? 1 or 2%? And that led me in pursuit a little bit. Yeah, I got to tell you, I was interested in getting quote unquote rich with Bitcoin, right? But it led me to Bitcoin, which led me to Richard, which led me to listening to him and some of the things that were happening in 2017, 2018. And when he launched, I was right there. And I can't tell you that my opinion hasn't changed. It has. Things have changed over time. I learned a whole bunch, man. I didn't even know what DeFi was because it didn't exist yet.
Right.
And so that the part one of that with Hex is to create a passive income stream, which you can do. And the part two of that with Pulse is to support our community and our environment and what we're doing with Hex. And oh, by the way, I get a copy, which is like a big giant freebie. I don't think anybody ever anticipated that. Mm-hmm. And the past has shown that when you double supply like that, the price goes up. So those are my thinkings on it. Yeah.
Absolutely. I'll admit I knew about Richard Heart for a while, actually. I've known about him for at least a year, and I actually got a message in the mail talking about Hex, and I'm presuming that's from.
Oh, you got the letter.
yeah, because I did. I'm presuming that's from the Ledger hack. So I got. That's the first time I actually looked at Hex, and I'm like, how did they get my address? And I'm like, oh yeah, Ledger, the security software that's not really secure with their customers' addresses.
Yeah.
And as I learned about Hex, I actually went. Funniest thing is the first time I actually had a conversation about Hex, I was in a meditation course, and I brought up to someone that I'm involved in cryptocurrency, and his wife looked at me with the dirtiest of looks. And she was like, please don't bring that around my husband. All he does is talk about it. And her husband was right behind me. And he's like, have you ever heard of Hex? I'm like, I've heard of it, but I've not really gotten into it. And then someone on Twitter by the name of Inverse Bully, someone I follow avidly, brought up PulseChain. And at the time I was cashed out of cryptocurrency, but I was interested in getting back in. And I saw PulseChain. I'm like, all right, this is Richard Heart. Hex has 10,000% in 10,000x in basically 2 years. PulseChain is basically perfecting the things I despise about Ethereum. Let me go into the community and see what's up. And I'm really, really like, I got to say, this is an amazing community. It really is.
It may be the luckiest break you've ever had.
What'd you say?
That may be the luckiest break you've ever had.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. and to learn from a meditation class, in a meditation class, it's funny how fate plays its part sometimes.
Yeah, it does. You know, I didn't know where it was all going to lead when I started with Hex. But listen, we get an email a day that says, what would happen if you had invested $1,000 in X, Y, and Z?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how I started. I said, well, I'm willing to figure out what $1,000 does and go ahead and do that. And now I was completely ignorant, but I sure learned a lot. Well, the game theory behind the Hex system is awesome, and I don't expect anything less out of Pulse. And it's an opportunity to get in on a new chain, and be part of that. And so it's a lot of fun.
Absolutely. And I'm noticing a lot of newcomers saying the same thing over and over again. I missed in the Pulse chat, I missed the train on Hex. PulseChain is a second chance. And I think that's very true. I think that's very true. In that regard, there's something I haven't asked in a podcast before about Hex and PulseChain that makes that I think that when I ask, any community this question, it's important to have this introspective thought on what can be improved. So, in your opinion, is there anything that can be improved within the Hex and PulseChain? Well, PulseChain's ecosystem hasn't launched yet, but when the PulseChain ecosystem comes out, do you think there's anything that can be improved upon in Hex and Pulse?
I don't know that I qualify it as improvement, but and I know some people are working on these topics already. But I would say is I would like to see more entities. I hate to. I don't want to make it sound centralized because I don't want centralization.
Of course.
But I think we need more adoption with more projects and more offerings. But that needs to come not only from Richard and his team, but also from us as a community. So that's one thing. And I think the other thing I'd bring up is for folks to remember their roots. A lot of people come in now and they think, oh, look, they look at the OGs and they go, oh, those OGs, they look what they got. And but it'll never happen for me. But it will happen for you. It can happen for you. Mm-hmm. And you have to remember the OGs didn't become successful without believing,
absolutely,
in the project and really committing to it. And that's what you see a lot on the streams. A lot of the people talking about their experience. I mean, mm-hmm. There were months where we were in downturns. And if you didn't hang on, and I almost didn't hang on a couple of times because you're trying to work through it and the emotions are high. So those are the two things. I mean, I think that all of us need to keep working on being better community members,
Absolutely. Without a communal foundation, any project is doomed to not realize its truest of potential, and that goes for not just cryptocurrency and blockchain, but that just spans any industry. And that's in my 4 years of cryptocurrency, I've noticed how important a community is. And once the community starts dying, the project, it doesn't matter how much money they have, chances are your project's going to go down. So I think that's a very important thing for any community to understand, that the community is arguably the most powerful force next to the actual development of the project.
I think you're right about that. That's undoubtable, I think,
mm-hmm.
Because what we're really trying to do here is provide a way for everyone who gets involved to earn over time interest and be able to live their lives in the way that they see fit, right? And that's kind of a little bit that libertarian bent, but yeah, I mean, that's what it's all about. It's okay, everybody wants to get quote unquote rich, but I think I'd settle for being able to take care of my family.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. It's important to stick to your roots in that respect. And we talk about roots and we talk about communities, and sometimes communities can become very tribalistic. And this is not exclusive to any community in cryptocurrency. This is everywhere. So I've heard this term before. in the Pulse chain community. Not often at all, actually, but a few times. And I've heard this in other communities like Solana, like Binance, and other Ethereum competitors. Would you say it's appropriate to call Pulse chain an Ethereum killer? Is it really appropriate to call any project an Ethereum killer or this type of killer? Like, shouldn't a ecosystem in its infantile stage be more about communal cooperation as opposed to tribalistic animosity, to say?
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, listen, even if you want it to be a killer, it's not. So, I mean, it's the different chains, they exist.
Mhm.
They'll exist and they'll go through their own lifespan. Um, uh, as we were talking about before, there seems to be a move to make Ethereum a store of value.
Mhm.
So it's kind of wasted energy trying to, draw that line and argue the point, right? Because what we're going to do may or may not result in affecting Ethereum at all, other than moving our projects and whatnot over. I mean, there's so many more people in the world that aren't using Ethereum right now that could be using a blockchain, and we'll have an awful lot of growth there. So I don't see it exactly as that. I definitely don't use that term. And as far as being an ETH killer.
Absolutely. I don't see the term ETH killer as appropriate either. I think that it's important that different blockchains do coexist. I mean, you really don't want to see a I guess you could say an oligopoly of a few blockchains where every other blockchain that does perfect technology is basically siphoned from any potential. And on the topic of potential, it's important to reference, that the blockchain itself comes with the success of what's built upon it. So with that being said, regarding Pulse chain, what applications would you, as a Hex OG and someone who's been in this ecosystem for a while, what applications would you like to see built on Pulse chain and why?
Okay. Well, listen, I don't know if what I'm going to say makes sense or would be right or work out in the end, but I think having contracts that allow me to not sell and be able to earn yield, like delegation, or being able to borrow just like I can on Coinbase, or I'd really like to see the Pulse chain, even though NFTs themselves are kind of a little weird in that you get that whole meme about a JPEG, right? Which is very true. I made one, right? I made took a picture. Well, actually, my buddy did. Took a picture and made an NFT out of it. And so, what is it? So they can get a copy of it. Well, I can go make that copy too. But that's only the beginning. Just trying to figure out how things will work. I mean, who knows? Maybe we'll have an NFT type marketplace that provides the backgrounds for the videos you watch, and you can't have the background unless you own the NFT, or you won't have something on the wall in your virtual room. I mean, there's so many different things. So I think the NFT area could be very interesting for Pulse because of the cost. And then beyond that, I really would like to see some, I don't know if they're apps exactly, but protocols that provide for safe transport of funds. And I know there's kind of an offset thing, but to different countries and to different people for humanitarian reasons, that type of thing.
Absolutely, and that would actually embody the ethos of what Richard Hart is doing now with that $27 million that was donated to medical research. So it would make sense if someone would create something on Pulse chain that would kind of emphasize that philanthropy, so to say.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, there's an awful lot. Really, the world's an oyster. I mean, we can build all sorts of different things.
Absolutely.
I just wish I was smart enough to be the one to do it.
Me too. I'll tell you one thing. I am the farthest thing from a developer. I have, I'll sit here and I can say the definition of smart contracts, API keys, peer-to-peer networks, but ask me to develop it, I'll have no idea. Yeah, I'm a teacher. I teach you a term. I have a master's degree in teaching. So basically, unfortunately, antiquated teaching methods is I'm going to tell you this regurgitated to me, but if you don't know how to do it, it kind of sucks to be you. So, it's I wish I had the expertise as well.
Maybe we all will. I don't know.
So here's another question. This is more of an investor oriented question because I've had people message me personally. Like I actually have a friend of mine who's interested in PulseChain, who I've gotten basically into the community. But this is a question that I think that is something that makes investors either very excited or very turned off. And I think it's important to discuss this. So for those who say PulseChain will have a very high supply, I believe that speculatively speaking right now, it's about higher than 100 trillion in supply. What is your rebuttal to investors?
Well, I don't know if there's a rebuttal per se, unless they have a specific complaint about that. So let's kind of back that out for a second, right? So what's the word? Well, you can't possibly have that big of supply because you can't have price performance, because if you had price performance, it would be worth more than anything else in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't know that argument really holds any water. Yes, we can say that Bitcoin had a limited supply, but Ethereum for a long time didn't,
Mm-hmm.
And they kind of moved towards the proof of stake, or they're moving towards proof of stake, and now the burning, etc. But there's quite a bit, and you can look at blockchain after blockchain with very high supplies.
Mm-hmm.
So having a high supply by itself doesn't seem to me to be a worry. That being said, what high supply does give you is a much lower price. And there is a price bias out there. People are biased on the perception of price. And so when something is very, very cheap, they're very interested in buying it. And when their perception is that it's high, they're not interested in buying it as much. It doesn't matter how it's performing. It's kind of like a human trait.
Yep.
It's why we buy things for 99 cents and not $1. Why do we buy something that's 99.99? Well, there's a reason for that, right? So yeah, I mean, we can get into the discussion about, is market cap a vanity measure, which it seems to be. I mean, what is it used for? We can go pull up Nomics right now and see 100 coins or tokens you've never even heard of.
Yep.
That have millions and millions and millions of dollars. So again, that's probably not the best way to spend our time, to kind of chase that question as to what the problem is. But I do get it, because people ask me the same thing. It's a pretty big supply. So yeah, I mean, maybe we're not. I don't want to say we won't, because never say never, right?
Right.
Maybe we're not going to see $1,000 per pulse out there. But that doesn't mean you can't still enjoy great gains with that while getting more people involved. That fraction just allows you to do so much more, particularly with the cheap gas fees.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what do you think about that? I mean, what is your answer, Ben?
So my answer is exactly, I think you highlighted it absolutely great, is that the price bias is so important. I was going to say the same exact thing, that when I first got into cryptocurrency, actually, I had this inherent price bias, and sometimes I still do. I was more enticed when I first got into cryptocurrency to buy a bunch, and this is a relatively unknown cryptocurrency now. It was a bit more popular in 2017, but Redcoin. Yeah, exactly. So I bought a whole bunch of Redcoin because $100 could get me a crap load of it, instead of me getting the same amount of another cryptocurrency in dollar value, because it's $1.50 per share. It kind of sucks.
Well, let's be honest about that, right? I mean, the low numbers get to push the speculation button,
Yes, they
right?
do.
Because everybody I know does the same thing. Oh, listen, I can go buy this coin over here. I'm going to get 20 million of them. Can
Mhm.
you imagine, Corey, what that's going to be like when it's $1? That's going to be 20. Now, it doesn't. It's part of their dreaming,
Mhm.
their speculation. Yeah, it's good to have that kind of thing, to be able to think that. And I don't mean to mislead anybody, but I think people need hope, that things will, they'll have an opportunity like that. And, if along the way they see 100 or 1,000x, that's pretty good, for what they
That's
put up.
amazing. That's
Or
amazing.
10,000x, right?
That would be incredible. That would be a something that would make every hexagon or pulse chain member of pulse chain. Well, hex already has 10,000x. So
Yeah, I wouldn't place a bet against Richard on that.
oh no, I'm not going to at all by any means.
Not you personally, but I mean, he has come out and said he would not be surprised. And when he says he would not be surprised, the Pulse will do 10,000x. Who am I to disagree with that?
Exactly. And to be honest with you, I trust a leader who is willing to put his life on the line, because even today, like I see on YouTube, not on YouTube, I'm sorry, Twitter, I started promoting Hex and PulseChain, and I've gotten a few people, because there's other communities that I've left in the past, a while back, that say here, oh, now you're promoting Hex, it's a scam. I'm like, no, it's not. You just have no idea what it does, and you have no idea who the leader is. Besides, all your rebuttal is oh, he does is show me his Gucci bags. But you know what? That people don't, especially in financial markets, especially in cryptocurrency, that willingness to be, I don't want to say omnipresent, but that vanity is actually very good, because it makes someone's mind state want their projects to succeed so bad,
Yeah.
because of their legacy. Their legacy is on the line, that they will do anything and everything in their power to ensure that it does not fail. So I don't care about his egotism. I could care less about his vanity. All I know is that that's a leader I want, because it tells me that you're literally going to put everything on the line to make sure your legacy is solidified through these two projects. So I don't care. I don't care about that whatsoever. And I know some people do. And I think that that's a little bit of a perspective that needs to change, especially in the past 2 years. Someone wrote to me on Twitter a couple of days ago, and I blocked them. They're like, the only thing I know about Hex is a scam. And I didn't even bother responding, because it's been 2 years. If someone was going to rug pull, if there was going to be a scam, it would have happened already. It's not a scam. It really isn't. It's not. Simple.
Well, I think people should judge based on fairly across all the different projects. You can't be in crypto and have not participated in one of these projects where time after time founders have just dumped on your head, and or just disappeared or made lots of promises. And at the very least, you should be judging on an equal basis, right?
Absolutely.
On the whole thing about Hex being a scam, yeah, I've had people ghost me. I mean, just for recommending it.
Yeah.
Because they look at it. I mean, what do they see? Now, the real smart ones take me up on the offer, right? And have gotten in. But I had a guy who did the same thing to me with it, and I contacted him. He's big into crypto, local guy, and thought, well, maybe he'd be interested, and said, hey, I'd like to show you this, Ghost City, right?
Yep.
Actually, a little bit worse than that, shut me down. Not interested. And what was I doing? I was looking to give him a $30 gift that's worth about $2,000 right now.
Wow.
But what's a $30 gift? It was because of the fees were so damn high. It's going to cost that much to move a little bit of Hex over and do a stake. The other thing I'd say about the whole Gucci and all that is so comical, because again, there are different people that are viewing these videos, and they're coming in at different times, and everybody has their own background. Some will look a little deeper, than others. But anybody who's really been watching knows the whole Louis Vuitton thing is, yeah, those are nice things. And sure, he might like them. It's the purpose of this is purely marketing. I mean, he
Exactly.
did it. It's all marketing.
It is.
And it's pretty fantastic, you know. I'm not going to buy one of those shirts, man.
Never mind. But it's
but I mean, that's the whole purpose. And so it is what it is. Everybody doesn't have to love it.
exactly. But it's brilliant in the fact that it's basically subtly saying, if you're this type of person, if you're interested in having these things, follow me, learn from me, invest in the projects that are created basically by me and the developers, of course. And I don't see a problem with that by any means. And there's something that you brought up to me that I'm actually very curious about, because I've never heard someone talk about this in association with Hex and PulseChain specifically. The FIRE concept is what I'm saying. What is the FIRE concept to you? And how does PulseChain and Hex assist in knowing your numbers, basically, staying grounded and budgeting properly? I had a little bit of, we touched upon this, me and Hodpril, in my last podcast, but I'm curious to hear your perspective as well based on this concept.
Sure. Well, so FIRE is F.I.R.E. And it's it's a philosophy. And there is no single right way to do it, but what it stands for is financial independence and then retire early.
Okay.
All right. So the information around that is, how do you become financially independent, and then how do you put yourself in a position, not necessarily you'll retire early, but you could retire early. And retire early means pursue something new where you don't have to worry about your monthly nut, because you already have what you need, right? And so I got to a point in my own career where I was doing very, very well, and but I couldn't pay my bills. I mean, pretty standard problem for most people. I mean, it's ridiculous. We live in the Northeast, and to be making more than 6 figures and not be able to pay all your bills at the end of the month was pretty disturbing. So one day I woke up. I call it growing up, but one day I grew up in my 40s, and decided, well, wait a minute, I need to start planning for the future. And what does that look like? And that's how I discovered FIRE. And so in the FIRE process, you go through, there's, like I said, there's different approaches. My approach is to understand your current situation, how to address things like too much debt and that type of thing, come up with your strategies and what you're going to do. And somebody driving by my house.
It's okay.
It was like I'm like the racetrack. But come up with your strategies on how you're how you're going to save for the future, earn for the future, and then work on that. And part of it is knowing what it is you want. I mean, we all want a lot. I mean, I guess I want $1 billion if I can get $1 billion, but what do I really need? And most people don't need much more than maybe $60,000 or $70,000 a year in the U.S., right? From that, there's just a whole bunch of math and methodology to come up with. All right, well, if I need to have this much in retirement, then I need to start saving and put that money to work in some sort of an asset base, whether it's equities or you buy real estate, whatever it is. And that's where Hex comes in, because the standard thumb rule, I don't like throwing these numbers out there because they piss me off. But, can you imagine telling somebody, hey, listen, you're never going to retire unless you have $5 million? I mean, you get a bad case of the ethics, right? I mean,
Yeah, you do.
Who has that, right? And you say, well, okay, how about $1 million? You need $1 million. Well, who has $1 million, right? Now you can get that through crypto for sure.
Great.
But I'm talking about, like the average Joe in the street. When you hear those types of numbers, you give people such big goals. They're like, I just forget it. I'm just going to spend my money. Go down to the pub, buy the next video game, online or whatever. Well, most people don't have $1 million, right? So let's get that out of our head. So what is the whole purpose? The purpose is to kind of like build for your future.
Mhm.
How do you build for your future? You got to have some sort of idea of your targets and what you're planning for. And if you're lucky enough to have discovered this, this community, you realize that you probably need conservatively 2/3 less, saved up and put into Hex stakes in order to do the same thing with the stock market.
Mhm.
You probably could argue with our price appreciation, how things have gone. You don't need 1%, right?
Right.
But I tend to go very conservative. And so with that being said, what I recommend to people, and I'm not an advisor, I do provide some coaching and stuff on the side, but the idea is if you have an idea of how much would make a difference in your life, whether it's going to be $300 a month or $500 a month, figure out what it takes to stake that much so that you can build a staking ladder that'll pay you what you need. And then over time, you just keep building it. And what you'll find, and I think a lot of the OGs found this out, is that a lot of folks started very small and things took off. And they had a process that they went through that when they had additional funds, after they paid their bills, after they fed themselves, they would put that money into stakes and as a form of investment and just keep building it. And it snowballed into so much more.
Yeah, I heard someone. The first thing I want to comment is I like how you said the 16 to 70,000 in America. I actually heard that from a well-known professor, and a well-known professor. He's very well known, Jordan Peterson. He's actually said that, and I can say that when it comes to financial planning, it's so important that for someone even my age at 26 years old, the amount of people that I know who don't have a financial plan, that are saddled in six figures in debt because they went to, not to say that college is bad, but they went to college and didn't use their degree, or they went to a college that they couldn't afford. And, this is going to have as you said, you're talking about a domino effect of monetary positivity with Hex and PulseChain eventually. A lot of these people still, even though with a $2.6 trillion market cap, there's still a lot of people who know what Bitcoin is, but they don't know how to get in. They don't know how to get into cryptocurrency. They don't know how to make passive income. And with cryptocurrency, it is very, very easy. Actually, passive income is how I was able to get through before I cashed out in May of this year. I was able to get through my last college semester of student teaching because I was able to, and it was kind of bamboozled like this. I was making 3 times more from my stakes in a cryptocurrency known as Icon than I did 2 years prior working at a part-time job. And cryptocurrency has taught me so much about understanding the mechanics of garnering passive income and garnering perspective on how to plan, because in cryptocurrency, you can go and take a piss and a coin goes down 50%. That you need to plan for that.
Absolutely.
And that's the main focus that cryptocurrency is taught. It's so much more than just investing in a coin and watching it rise or fall. There's so much monetary. If you look for it, you can learn. You can have basically an education on monetary concept and financial tools, as you've highlighted, through just blockchain and cryptocurrencies.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, there's so much there in what we're doing. Again, the whole DeFi phase, or I don't want to say craze, but DeFi itself, I mean, is an innovation that I've never, who would have thought this was going to happen,
I didn't.
And Hex is the number one way, I think, at least on, of course, I'm biased, but the number one way in the, in cryptosphere to make that type of gain in what I consider to be a safe, reliable way. And obviously, your advertisements for other chains at higher APY, but nothing quite has the game theory that this system has. It creates some stickiness, man. I mean, who doesn't want to keep buying? You know.
No, absolutely. I mean, it kind of speaks for itself that Hex is, if you look at its actual market cap, if coin market cap wasn't, so inherently biased against this project, people would see that Hex in terms of market capitalization take advantage of that notion, and they are anywhere between number 3 and 6 in market cap, which kind of proves the point that people are taking advantage of the certificate of deposit paradigm of Hex, and I see why. I absolutely see why. And once PulseChain comes out, I intend on delegating my coins for APYs, because passive income is really the way to go. Until you have a price target where you want to liquidate your cryptocurrency, passive income is really the way to go. You basically can earn back your principal over a period of time, plus compounding your stack. I don't see anything wrong with staking whatsoever. It's a win-win in every scenario.
Oh, it makes so much sense, particularly in this. And those are some of the things that took months for me to learn, but that I finally did learn. And yeah, I agree with that. And we have tons of opportunity. Pulse is probably going to be the moonshot of all moonshots. Not probably. I really believe it is. I'm in, and I'm ready for it.
Absolutely, and I am as well. I can't wait to I sacrificed with a close friend of mine, so and then I'm going to be buying once it comes out. I'm going to be like a hawk with 3 Red Bulls in my system, waiting for it to launch. And
all of us will be doing that.
Absolutely.
Well, one of the fun things I've been doing lately, I can't wait for it to launch. I haven't stopped buying and staking, but I'm interested in Pulse coming out so that I can build different types of ladders.
Interesting.
Different type of ladder and on Pulse. Like one of the things I'm doing right now, just for fun, is because I need a direction. Is I'm trying to build a ladder with one share per year.
Okay, cool. That's awesome.
Model that out, because I figured that's something that's achievable for a lot of people.
Absolutely.
It's a great example.
No, that's great. Anything to build passive income, especially if Pulse can be advantageous for that, why not? So,
what do you think is going to happen when Pulse rolls? Do you think that X is going to stay steady on price? You looking for a dump? What do you think?
That's a very, very good question. I think that Hex and Pulse will complement one another. I do believe it's so difficult because Pulse, it's so difficult to make that presumption. It's a very good question. I think when Pulse comes out, we have so many people that are still sacrificing at like, I don't know, an 85x from the initial sacrifice rate, that it's a very difficult thing to say, but I do believe what's going to happen is that Pulse is, and I could be completely wrong on this, I just want to keep that in mind. I think Pulse is going to pump substantially and have a retracement and have a price discovery as the hype goes down. Like there's so much hype right now, hype. Then the hype will release astronomically, and then things will level off and calm down, which I think personally would be, I have to see how day one goes if I'm going to buy more or not, depending on if I see it launch, because nobody knows what the price of Pulse is going to be. People say it's going to start at 0, but I think it'll complement Hex. And I think that because people are going to want to have their clone of Hex on the Pulse chain network, I just think that if this market keeps rising, nonetheless, I think Hex will be complemented by those two predicaments as well. I don't see why they wouldn't be.
Yeah. Well, I'll preface anything I say with don't listen to anything I say, because every time I say something is wrong. That's been my experience so far. So I like to try to guess at what's going to happen, but they're purely guesses.
Right.
But my sense is that first off, I don't think anything's going to happen to the Hex price on Pulse but go up.
I agree.
And I know some people think they're going to get it cheap. They might get it cheap in relation to a number of Pulse, but I don't know that it would be a good dollar value.
Mhm.
But I do expect it to be eaten up. I mean, I've thought about taking all my Pulse and turning it into Hex once I get it. So I see nothing but upside there at the moment. Now, at that long term, it wouldn't come down again a little bit. I think it would. Maybe we would see an 80% dip or a 50% dip, you know, months after.
Right.
For EHEX, that's another one. I think that you will see EHEX drop in price.
Mhm.
You know, the Hex on Ethereum, but I do expect it to come back and rebound to parity. It's going to depend on how well bridged and connected everything is.
Absolutely.
If a hex is a hex is a hex, well, then what I just said isn't going to work.
Mhm.
It isn't going to happen that way. But in isolation, I could see people getting out of the Ethereum side and trying to get their money over into Pulse. I can see that happening. But again, man, you're not going to know until it happens.
Agreed. But I like how you reference an important point. I do believe, though, that since Pulse and Hex basically complement one another, that if there is going to be a price appreciation on PRC20, basically ERC20 clones on a Pulse chain, Hex is going to be one of the dominant forces that are going to rise in appreciation because Pulse and Hex coincide with one another. They're like sister coins. So it would make logical sense that the coin that the community is most familiar with to begin with, Hex, besides Ethereum, I'd say, would have that market advantage of exposure and backing from a community that is so strong to begin with.
Yep. Yep. Well, you know, and I think a lot of people, because we don't really know. I mean, how many of us have been through a fork, you know, to a brand new chain with a complete system state? None of us, right? So let's see what happens. It's going to be fun, though. And I'll tell you, my number one thing, I'll be sitting on my hands. I'm not going to do anything until I see what the heck's going on, because I don't think I can front run. But one of the, you know, a couple of interesting, let's call them rumors, because they're not theories exactly, but a couple of interesting things that have been batted around. One is, we know the liquidity pools are going to be filled and redistributed, right? Has been the potential for an airdrop.
Absolutely.
Which might explain why people are sacrificing 100 hex now on a single address. Like, whew, like, I mean, it costs them more in gas than it costs to you know, for the hex itself.
I did that.
Yeah, so that's one big theory. Another one is, I think that we don't really truly understand the dynamics of what's going to happen with the pricing. You might, because, you know, Richard's mentioned a couple times, we may launch without a bridge. In fact, originally the plan was you would need at least a couple days, maybe a day, but you would need some time without a bridge, because you need to establish that these tokens are in your custody at zero value.
Absolutely.
That could turn out to be a 2-3 week deal. I don't know. I'm just guessing. Maybe it's a 1 week deal. But every day the trading goes on within that ecosystem, where people are thinking, like, for instance, that Hex is cheap and they want to buy more Hex. Well, what happens when they buy more Hex to the ratio? Well, the price of Hex goes up in relation to the ratio to Pulse, which was originally based on Ethereum. So how does that all get synced up later? And these are just raw numbers. If one Ethereum is worth 10,000 Pulse, and 10,000 Pulse was, I'm just throwing out a number, was worth 100,000 Hex, and now 10,000 Pulse is only worth 50 Hex, or 50,000 Hex, what does that mean? How do these dynamics play? And are we suddenly going to see some sort of huge arbitrage opportunity once they do open a bridge? Don't know.
That's a good point.
It'll be fun. It's going to be fun to watch to see what happens.
I didn't even think about that. That's a good point. And I do agree with you about the sacrificing thing. I should have referenced that myself, that, like, I threw $15 into the sacrifice just to get a Genesis wallet, just so I can get airdrops in the future if any projects launch. It's not You can't lose throwing in $15 for a Genesis wallet.
No, not at all. No, not if it comes back. Now that's not advocating chasing the airdrops, but
Of course.
I known a few people try that, but I did it myself. And man, was that costly. But
Definitely. So I want to say, Chrispy, I really, really appreciate your time today. I appreciate your in-depth knowledge and your perspective on these questions. And hopefully, me, you, and Gunther can go out to lunch soon. I know we're all in the same vicinity, so I would definitely enjoy that.
yeah, thanks, Corey. I appreciate the offer. You've had some of my favorite people on already.
Appreciate that.
So Hodpol and Gunther are both good people.
Very, very smart people.
Very excited to have them as part of the community as well as you. And so really, my thanks to you.
Thank you so much.
Having the conversation.
I'm happy to help. I'm happy to bring on any community member from the Hex and PulseChain community to garner their perspectives. I do podcasts for projects that I love and the communities that I wholeheartedly respect. So, I have more on the way. So I'm very happy to
we'll be looking for them.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Chrispy, for your time.
No, thank you, Corey. I appreciate it.
No problem.